What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to J All Day. In today's episode, I want to preview the NL Championship Series between the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Philadelphia Phillies. If you follow along with my channel, you know I'm a die-hard Phillies fan, but I want to bring you a completely unbiased opinion on this series, who has advantages where, and who will ultimately win this series. Alright, stick around. The NLCS preview is coming up. There's a great article on The Athletic that kind of breaks down this entire series from pitching matchups to who's hot and who's not. So we're going to go through this article and discuss this series. Okay, the series opens up in Philadelphia on Monday night, and we have Zach Gallen versus Zach Wheeler, the battle of the Zacks, and their stats over the course of the season were virtually identical, but I just think Zach Wheeler has that playoff experience. He has that big game experience. So I give the advantage in this game to the Philadelphia Phillies. But in order for Arizona to win this series, they're going to have to win one of these road games in Philadelphia. If they lose both games in Philadelphia, that means they pretty much have to win all three games at home. Games 3, 4, and 5. Then we move on to game 2. We have Merrill Kelly versus Aaron Nola. The first two pitching matchups are great for both teams. There's not a real huge advantage for any team here in regard to the starting pitching. But the Phillies seem to have more of an advantage as this series moves forward. In games 3, they could have Ranger Suarez, and games 4 or 5, they're going to pitch Taijuan Walker. So they have a little more depth in that starting rotation with guys with a lot more experience overall. So as far as pitching is concerned, I think the Philadelphia Phillies have the advantage here. Both teams are coming off an incredibly hot start, right? If you would have told me the Dodgers and Braves, who won over 200 games in the regular season, would only win one game in the divisional series between both teams, I would have said you are absolutely crazy. But that's exactly what happened. The difference between Arizona and Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Phillies have bigger names with a lot more experience than this young Arizona team, but this Arizona team is young, they're hungry and extremely feisty. They knocked off a much more experienced Dodgers team in the NLDS, so this series is going to be a lot of fun to watch play out. This article points out that Corbin Carroll, Ketel Marte, and Christian Walker may lack the name recognition as Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, and Nick Castellanos, but the top of this lineup destroyed the Dodgers. And if the Phillies want to win this series, they got to really contain those three guys. But the Phillies have stars who haven't showed up yet. Bryson Stott, Kyle Schwarber, and Alec Boehm have struggled in the first two series, and if the Phillies really want to win, they have to spread out some of the love. They had really crazy performances from Bryce Harper and Nick Castellanos, who homered like it was going out of style. So if Arizona wants to win, they got to contain those three guys, and the same thing goes for the Phillies. Those top 3-4 guys for Arizona are going to have a lot of trouble getting these guys out. If Bryce Harper and Castellanos stay this hot, I find it extremely hard to believe that Arizona will be able to keep up with the firepower on offense and the pitching power on defense. Alright guys, here are the game times. Like I said before, game 1 is on Monday, game 2 is on Tuesday, then we have an off day on Wednesday, then we're back in Arizona for game 3 on October 19th, that's a Thursday, and then game 4 and 5 are Friday and Saturday night. Then we have a day off on Sunday, and then we're back to Philadelphia for games 6 and 7, Monday and Tuesday, if these games are necessary. I really think for Arizona to win this series, they're going to have to win 2 out of the first 3 games. If they find themselves down 2-1 in this series, I don't like their chances, because then the aces of the Phillies will come back into this series, and to beat Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler back-to-back is going to be extremely hard to do. In this article, they discuss why both teams will win, and we'll start with Arizona. The Diamondbacks started this postseason as heavy underdogs, as everyone knows. The Dodgers once again won over 100 games, but their pitching was a little banged up going into this series. But they proved that this young team is really resilient, and they kicked the dog shit out of the Dodgers. Clayton Kershaw in that first game showed that his playoff woes continued. He got absolutely obliterated. The offense that was such a question mark forced the Dodgers starting pitching to toss only 4 2/3 innings over 3 games. Man, if Arizona can have this kind of success early against the Phillies starting pitching, they could absolutely win this series. But Clayton Kershaw is not the Clayton Kershaw of 5-10 years ago. Zach Wheeler is 10 times the pitcher Clayton Kershaw is right now. This article also discusses how challenging it is to play in Philadelphia. If you've ever been to Citizens Bank Park in October, it's the loudest stadium in Major League Baseball by far. It's not even close. And this article also discusses they could pitch starter Zach Gallen 3 times if they had to in 7 games, but that seems like a little bit of a stretch, right? There's not a lot of off days. I think there's only 2 built-in off days. So for Zach Gallen to have to pitch 3 times in the series, that's a lot to ask of one guy. The Phillies starting pitching has a lot more depth. In Game 3 and 4, they're going to have Taijuan Walker and Ranger Suarez. And Ranger Suarez, his first 2 starts, has looked really good in the playoffs so far. This article also goes into saying that Arizona is well rested. Well, so are the Phillies. They only won their series 1 day before the Phillies did. And the Phillies were getting, 3-4 days off before this series starts on Monday. So I think both teams are going to be refreshed. And I think that's a wash. They're both coming in with their number 1 starters. They're both going to be well rested. And we'll really get to see in this 7-game series who is the better team. When a series is 7 games, the better team usually wins, because over these 7 games, a lot can go right and a lot can go wrong. And if you're depending on one player or one section of your team to win, that's not going to happen. You're going to need contributions from guys who weren't contributing in the wins in the other series. The Phillies absolutely crushed the Braves. They shouldn't even have been 4 games. They should have won that 2nd game. They had a little hiccup in the 7th inning with some questionable coaching choices, bringing in Hoffman, which he's a journeyman right-handed reliever, and Rob Thompson seems to like him, but he's not a great relief pitcher. I'd much rather see Seranthony Dominguez or Alvarado in those particular situations. The Phillies were able to dispose of a great Braves team without 3 of their major stars really contributing at all. Bryson Stott, Kyle Schwarber, and Alec Boehm were all non-existent in that series, but they got picked up by the incredible performances of Nick Castellanos and Bryce Harper. Trey Turner's bat is starting to come around a little bit, but his defense is very suspect. So if the Phillies want to win the series, they really got to tighten up that infield defense. The outfield defense has been great, but they can't have these games where Trey Turner's having 2 errors and Bryce Harper is in between scoops at first base, because those mistakes will catch up to you in a 7-game series. So, who do I ultimately think is going to win this series? I do think that the Phillies roster is better, but they have to get their starters some innings. If they're getting pushed out in 3 and 4 innings and not getting into the 5th and 6th innings, they're going to have a lot of trouble closing out this series. So I'm looking for the Phillies to win this series in 6 games. It's going to go the distance. I don't think Arizona's going to go away easily. They're going to put up a fight. They've been really hot. And I think if Arizona wants to have a chance, they got to win at least 1 game in these 2 games to open the series in Philadelphia. And for Philadelphia, you really want to go at home, use that home field advantage, win the first game and the 2nd game with your horses, Wheeler and Nola, and go into Arizona where you could potentially lose 2 games and still be up in the series going home at Game 6 and Game 7. So let me know in the comments below, who do you think is going to win this series? How do you think they're going to win this series and why? Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace!